Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk, the series where I talk about things and give you my honest opinion. Today we're talking about Alita Battle Angel. Alita Battle Angel is a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk action film set in the 26th century based on the manga Gunnm and directed by Robert Rodriguez. The film centers on a cyborg scientist named Dyson Edo who, while rummaging through a junkyard, finds a disembodied female cyborg whom he names Alita after his deceased daughter. After putting her back together again, it turns out that Alita is something more than what they thought, and she goes on a quest to discover who she really is. The film stars that one chick who left with Machine Gun Kelly in Bird Box for no apparent reason as Alita, Tim Roth as Dyson Edo, Francis as Zapan, Cottonmouth as Vector, the Hulk as Nova, and Jennifer Connelly in a forgettable role that probably doesn't even matter if I list her. So, a bit of background here. I didn't know anything about this film before going in besides the hilariously undercooked trailer from a little over a year ago, so I'm approaching this as someone who knows nothing about the series. When I actually watched that trailer, I couldn't believe how poor the CGI looked and how out of place the titular character felt. Couple that with the fact that I've never read a single comic about this character, Alita was something that was clearly on the back burner as far as movies that I was anticipating in 2019. Fortunately, I got invited to a fan event where we got an early screening of the film, and after watching it and taking a bit of time to marinate on it, the one word I'd use to describe this film is cheese. This film is probably the cheesiest science fiction film I think I've ever watched. And while that necessarily isn't a bad thing, it does sort of take you out of the film when characters who've just met each other a couple days ago begin throwing around "I love yous" and "you mean everything to me." It's like, no, you didn't earn that. But this is probably my biggest issue with the film, in that a lot of it truly feels forced and unearned. A lot of the characterization feels like the film is just sort of on fast forward, and for a film that's exactly 2 hours long, it feels woefully underdeveloped in some areas. For example, when Edo puts Alita back together, she apparently can't remember anything. And I mean anything. She's given an orange to eat and she's like, "Whoa, what's this? That's amazing. What do you call this?" And then in the next scene, she's using millennial slang out of nowhere. I'm like, so you didn't know what a fucking orange is, but you can tell people not to have a cow? And the villains are probably best described as cartoonish. If you've ever seen a Saturday morning cartoon, you've seen pretty much everything in Alita. And this says nothing of the mind-bogglingly underused Mahershala Ali and Jennifer Connelly. You have 2 Academy Award-winning actors, and you don't use them. Jennifer Connelly has a scene where she is absurdly hot, and then she just basically disappears. I mean, literally at the end of the film, she disappears. Mahershala Ali is really good in the scenes he does appear in, though. I mean, this guy is just one of the great actors of our time, and it saddens me that he's not given much, if anything, to do. The trailers made it seem like he had much more of a presence than he actually did. To add insult to injury, the film literally ends with no real closure and is attempting to set up an unearned sequel. Now, I know it seems like I'm completely negative on this film, but there are quite a few things to like about it. Firstly, Rosa gives a really fun performance as Alita. She really goes for it and you can tell she's having fun with the role. She gives quite the emotional performance and she was a real bright spot in the film. The CGI used on her looks much more realistic than it did in the trailers, but there are times where it dips into the uncanny valley. Her gigantic eyes can be a bit jarring at first, but you get used to it fairly quickly and it isn't as distracting as you might think. Speaking of the CGI, this world looks wonderful. As most of you know, science fiction is my absolute favorite genre of film, and a big reason for me loving the genre is world building. I think they knocked it out of the park with a setting that actually feels lived in. Iron City feels like a futuristic South American city with tons of cultures thrown into the mix. If I had to draw a comparison, I'd say it looks like Blade Runner had a baby with Elysium. Speaking of Elysium, a lot of people will draw comparisons to that film, even though this film's tone is completely different. Hell, there's even a floating city above Iron City that everyone wants to get to, just like Elysium. Motorball is the most popular sport in the city, and these sequences were okay for the most part. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that most people will liken these roller derby matches to Transformers in that a lot of the action is incomprehensible fight scenes between mechs and robots. They were exciting though, and the sound mixing was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the sound effects alone were enough to get my heart racing. As an aside, and I have absolutely no confirmation of this, but the Motorball announcer sounded almost exactly like the Pod Racer announcer from The Phantom Menace. I got a good laugh out of that, even though I'm probably wrong. So, do I think you should go watch Alita: Battle Angel? Sure, if you don't mind a bit of cheese and can turn your brain off to enjoy some admittedly really good action sequences. The story is pretty much what you would expect from this kind of premise, and unfortunately the film underuses some of its greatest assets. You're not going to get the what does it mean to be human aspect of cybernetic science fiction, which could be good for some and bad for others, myself included. The world at least feels fleshed out though, and the obvious sequel will have something tangible to play around with. A C. As always, thank you all for watching this video and supporting this channel, especially my patrons. You guys are the real MVPs. Are you excited for Alita? Have you seen it already? Leave me a comment and let me know what you think. As you know, I love reading and responding to those comments, so please keep them coming. Anyway, this has been your friendly neighborhood Birdman, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Let's Talk. See ya!